Recently, I shared a series of videos on how to design your own sampler scarf using this beautiful one sold in stores as an inspiration. Now, many of you were interested in a companion beanie, so that's what we'll be working on today. There are two ways that you can approach making your beanie. You can either work flatly or you can work it in the round, and I'll be showing how to do both in this video. But please note that this is only a guide, not a full step-by-step tutorial. Along with the previous videos in the series and the tips that I'm going to share today, you should have everything you need to know to be able to design your own hat like a pro. Now, either way, the very first step is figuring out the dimensions of your hat. Here is a chart with average measurements, but if you're making this for yourself, I highly recommend that you use a tape measure. Super easy, you just need two measurements, the circumference of your head and the height. For the circumference, or in other words, the width around your head, wrap it around your forehead, right above the eyebrows. You'll probably see something around 20 to 22 inches. Next, for the height of your head, measure from ear to ear, going over the top of your head. Now take that number and divide it in half for the height. For example, mine was about 16 from ear to ear, which divided in half is 8 inches. The other thing I recommend is grabbing your favorite beanie as a template. This works really well because it's going to show you the fit and the size that you like. Do the same thing, measure the height and the width of your beanie, and then you can compare it to your personal measurements. Another thing to kind of look at is look at the stretch of it. Keep that in the back of your mind because you're going to want to know those kind of details when you work this up in crochet. Once you have your dimensions, the easiest way to start is with the granny squares. Here's a layout using the reference photo as a guide. Now, if this is your very first video, you can find the tutorials for those squares in the description box below the video. As I began working on this, I realized that there was even a smaller granny square being used than we've made in the past videos, and I will be showing here in just a moment how to make it. Your goal here is to create a strip of grannies that reaches the circumference or the width that you came up with earlier. Now, this is really important. You do not want to go beyond that width measurement that you came up with earlier because yarn stretches, and if you go beyond it, it's probably going to get too big. And that's really going to depend on the yarn that you're using. If you're using a cotton like me, it doesn't have a whole lot of stretch, so I don't need to go too short. But if I'm working with something that has more stretch, like a wool or an acrylic, then you may want to go a little bit shorter than that. These little mini squares are approximately 2 by 2 inches or 4 by 4 centimeters. If you want to skip the tutorial, it's 8 half double crochets for the center worked into a magic ring with a chain 1 space in between each 2 half double crochets. So 2 half doubles, chain 1, 2 half doubles all the way around. And then for your corners, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, skip over to the next corner and repeat that all the way around. But if you want to see it done, magic ring or a chain 4 with a slip stitch to form a ring. Either way, chain 2 to serve as a half double crochet. I'm going to use that little join there as one of the chains. And then half double, chain 1, 2 half doubles, chain 1, 2 half double crochets, chain 1, one more set, that's 2 half doubles, chain 1. Work a slip stitch into the very first stitch that you made and fasten off. I'm just doing a chain and then snipping my yarn. Fasten on into any chain 1 space. We're going to work our corners now. Fasten on however you like best and chain 2 or 3 to serve as your first double crochet. Add another. Chain 1. And add 2 more double crochets into the same space. I'm going to go right over to the next chain 1 space and work the same sequence. 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, And I'm just going to repeat this all the way around. To fasten off, I'm going to go into the very first true stitch that I made. I'm skipping that chain, doing a chain 1 to fasten off. I worked over those ends so I can snip those off now. And now I just have these 2 to weave in and my square is done. To join your pieces together, use whatever joining technique you like best. For mine, I use the invisible seam, and I do share how to do that in the part 3 of the sampler scarf series. Once you've joined your piece together, I do recommend every now and again testing it to just see how it's feeling. Just wrap it around your head. And I would even do a quick whip stitch along the edge to try it on and just see how it's fitting. I mean, this is so cute just on its own. You could do the invisible seam to just join the 2 sides together, add a round of single crochets on each side, and just make yourself a really cute ear warmer. So once you've created your strip and everything looks good to go, now you can either work flatly or in the round. If you're just going to work flat, then you can choose any kind of stitches that you want to work up to the height of your hat. For example, I worked my way up to 8 inches. For mine, I did 2 rows of the Moroccan tile stitch, followed by double crochets together in each stitch. So when you look closely, this is 2 double crochets together in each stitch. If you decide to do the Moroccan tile stitch as well, there are a couple of things that I did differently than in the little square that we did in the specialty stitches video. First, I did a row of single crochets all the way across, making sure to create a stitch count that was a multiple of 3 plus 1. I believe it turned out to be 57. Then I did the setup row of single crochet, chain 2, skip 2, single crochet all the way across. Sometimes I added 3 chains to get across because it was pulling too tightly. Don't know why it was making such a difference, but just keep that in mind. Now, the one big tweak that I made was I did 3 double crochets in those spaces instead of 2. It just seemed like it needed it because it was looking a little too gappy for me since I'm going to be wearing it. I didn't want to have as many gaps at this point, so I put 3 instead of 2. And then everything else was just the same. So I did 2 rounds of the Moroccan tile stitch followed by a row of single crochets at the top, then 2 rows of 2 double crochets together in each stitch across. If you look at the reference photo, they used more rounds of the double crochet stitches, but this is all I needed to reach my 8-inch height. You'll notice here also I did a round of single crochets all the way around, just 3 single crochets in the corners. Also at the very end here, I did another extra row of single crochets because it looks like in the reference photo, this is how they handled the brim. Now all we have to do is seam this together to form our hat. To do this, we're just going to fold the sampler and we're going to take the 2 sides and seam them together. Use your favorite joining technique. I'm going to continue on with the invisible seam. I'm going to start from the bottom and work up to the top where the top of the head would be. I have right sides on the outside, so the wrong sides are facing in. I'm going to have at least double for the side and at least double for the top and a little extra for good measure. Just using a Susan Bates finishing needle, use whatever you like best. And I'm not going to go into detail about how to do this because I show how to do the joining technique in part 3 of the series. Once you come to the end, it's time to form the top of our hat. So we're just going to go in, alternating from front to back. All the way around. When you come to the end, cinch it as tightly as you can without breaking your yarn. And then if you have a little bit of a gap, you can continue to kind of stitch it into place. But I would recommend if you do that, work it on the other side. And then once you're happy with everything, it's time to weave in all of your ends and think about your pom-pom. If you want to work this in the round, it's pretty easy to do, but I do recommend that you're comfortable with doing decrease rounds, which just means taking away stitches as you work your way towards the top of the hat. Just as a guide for this or any beanie that you're working on, a really good decrease count is a multiple of 8, and that's what we're going to be using here. So just like before, after you've worked your granny squares into the width that you want, go ahead and join it together to form a ring. I use the invisible seam because that's my favorite join. I am going to do a round of the Moroccan tile stitch, and for that you'll need a multiple of 3 plus 1. I think for mine here that came out to 57, and then after that we need to take it back down to just the multiple of 8 to continue on with the decrease. If you don't want to do the Moroccan tile stitch, you can scrap it and replace it with other simpler stitches, half double crochets, whatever you want to do. But I'm just going to stick with the plan here, and I'm going to fasten on with a round of single crochets all the way around. Instead of slip stitching and fastening off, I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch with the new color. And I'm just going to do a single crochet in there as well. I'm going to do 3 double crochets into these spaces like I did for the flat version. During the scarf version, I only did 2 double crochets. But I think this will work a little bit better since it's going on the head. I don't want it to be too gappy. Fasten off, I'm just going to go into the top of the chain 2. Even though this is 57 stitches around the top, I'm going to do a mental note and turn it into 56 for myself because I'm going to start the decreasing with these single crochets. So I'm going to take it from 56 down to 48. I'm going to show you a diagram here really quick to show you the decreasing count. So we want to go from 56 to 48. So we're going to do 5 single crochets, a decrease, 5 single crochets all the way around. So into the same area that I just did my slip stitch, I'm going to do my first single crochet. And I'm just doing 5 single crochets into the top of each of those stitches. So I have these 2 stitches here that I want to turn into 1. You can do this a couple of different ways. You can either skip that stitch and go into the other, just cross over it, or you could do it more properly where you go into the next stitch, you have 3 loops on your hook, pull through all 3, and that's a decrease also. It takes those 2 stitches and turns it into 1. But I'm just going to skip over. Okay, so 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now it's time for a decrease. It's these 2 stitches. Either skip over that and go into the next, or do the decrease how I just showed you. I'm just going to skip over it. I'm just going to do this all the way around. When you come to the end, you should have 48 stitches, or whatever your decrease number was. I'm going to fasten off and use a different color. So I'm just going to weave that in and start somewhere else. And from here on out, we're just going to be working double crochets together. If you prefer, you could just do 1 double crochet in each stitch. I'm going to do 2 double crochets together. That's going to give us the same stitch count. I just want it because I like the fuller look of it, and it's what it looks like they're using in the reference photo. Okay, go ahead and fasten on however you like best. You can either do a standing double crochet or a chain 2 or 3 to serve as your first double. I'm just doing a chain 2. And for this very first stitch, I'm just doing a regular double crochet in there with it. So for this, we're continuing on with our decreasing. We want to go down from 48 down to 40. Now we're going to be doing 4 stitches with a decrease. We're going to do 3 more stitches. Again, you can either do 1 double crochet per stitch or the 2 together. So to do 2 together, going into the stitch, pull through 2, going back into the stitch, pull through 2, and then pull through all 3. So now we're doing it 2 more times. Now we're going to do a decrease, and the easiest way to do this decrease is to follow the same practice. Go in, pull through 2, but instead of doing it in the same stitch, go over to the next one. That's my neighbor dog, Bolt. Pull through 2, and you have 3 loops on your hook. Pull through all 3. So what we've done is we've done the same stitch, but with 2 stitches from below. Can you see the difference? In 1 stitch, this time we did it in 2. And we're just going to do this all the way around now. We're going to do the next 4. And now we're doing a decrease in these next 2 stitches. We're doing the same stitch, but crossing it over 2 stitches there. And then I'm just going to fasten off into the top of the first true stitch that I made. I'm going over that chain 2. And you can absolutely fasten back on here if you want. I'm just going to fasten off and go to a different portion of the hat just to help switch it up a bit. Okay, so I'm fastening on in a different area. 2 double crochets into that very first stitch. And now for the next 2 stitches, I'm doing the 2 together. And now a decrease. So in these next 2 stitches, I'm doing the same thing, but just crossing over. So we're just going to do this all the way around. 3 stitches and then a decrease. Remember, you can do this with any kind of stitch that you'd like to be working on. You don't have to be following this exactly. I'm just really wanting to show you how to do these decreases. Before moving on to the next decrease round, it's really important that you keep an eye on your measurement. So here I'm getting very, very close to my 8-inch mark. That is my goal. So look and see where you are with your goal. So what I'm going to do here instead, and this is what I recommend you do as well, if you're dealing with the same issue, is go to a shorter stitch. Just like we did single crochets for one of the decreases here, you can do the same all the way up until you get to the top. But I'm going to go ahead and do half double crochets here. For this decrease round, we're going to be going from 30 down to 24. So we want to do 2 stitches, decrease, 2 stitches, decrease. So I'm going to do half double crochets here. I'm just going to fasten on with a chain 1. This will get me to the height of a half double crochet. And now I'm just going to do a half double crochet into the next stitch. To do a half double crochet decrease, yarn over, go into the stitch, pull through, go into the next stitch, pull through. You have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4 stitches. That's a half double crochet decrease. Now we're doing a half double crochet into the next 2 stitches, and then another decrease, going in, pulling through, going into the next one, pull through, yarn over and pull through all 4 stitches, and continue this all the way around. And now for me, I'm just going to do single crochet decreases since I've hit that 8-inch mark. If you have a lot more room to go, then I would continue on with the bigger stitches. For this, I'm just going to go down to single crochet decreases now. I want to go from 24 to 16, so I'm going to do 1 stitch, a decrease, 1 stitch, a decrease. So I'm starting with a single crochet in the first stitch, and now I'm going to do a decrease. Remember, you can either go in like that to create your decrease, or you can skip that stitch completely. It's completely up to you, however you want to do your decrease, to see what you prefer. Okay, I've come to the end. So now that you're down to 16 stitches, you can either do another decrease round where it's going to take you to 8 stitches here in the center. That's going to be awfully tight. All you have to do for that is just do a decrease in every stitch around, or you can fasten off here and just weave it and cinch it closed. Just give myself a little bit of a guide here so I don't go crazy with the decreasing. But I'm just going to go ahead and decrease, since I'm here, 8 times. And then from here on out, I'm just going to weave it in. I'm going to give myself a nice long tail. And I'm just going to cinch that whole together. I'm just going to weave back and forth. And those stitches, just going back and forth. Okay, beautiful. Now we're just going to go through the other side. Not liking the gappiness there, so I'm just cleaning that up a little bit. I got a little gappy with that decrease, so I'm just going to try to tighten that up a little bit. And yes, I will weave in all of these ends. I know someone will ask, what are you going to do with all of those ends? I'm going to weave those ends in later off camera. And all that's left to do now is just to go around this side with a round or 2 of single crochets. Important tip here, if you try it on and you find it's feeling too tight, you can add increases, extra single crochets while you're doing these rounds just to loosen things up. Or if it's really kind of big on you, which it shouldn't be after all of this measuring, but if it is, then you can do some decreasing while you do it. And as you know, the decreasing is pretty easy. You can either skip some stitches or do a proper single crochet decrease. But for here, I tried mine on. It feels pretty good, so I'm just going to go all the way around with single crochets as evenly as possible, trying not to lose any stitches. And I think I'll do 2 rounds of singles just to give it a nice finish. You'll notice in the reference photo a really cute pom-pom that they've added to their beanie. I'm not going to do that here. It takes up a lot of yarn. Now, if you want to make something like that, you can do it by hand. Otherwise, you can find a Pom Pom Maker that's pretty inexpensive at your craft store. I'll see if I can find one of those as well and leave a link in the description box below the video. But otherwise, I would just recommend getting a really cute, fluffy, furry pom-pom that you can find at your local craft shop or order online. This is what I would prefer to do. It's a lot easier and doesn't take as much yarn. And there we go, 2 beanies, 2 ways, flat or in the round. I'll go ahead and add a playlist here at the end of the video so you can find all of the videos that are related to the sampler scarf as well as this beanie. And I'll be sure to put all of the links in the description box below the video as well.